Alright guys, now we're going to do the little chrome one. Let's roll into the tutorial. This one's going to have a couple different things going on with it. We're going to make a few changes, but let's roll into the video and see what happens. Okay, on this one, I'm going to take the same bluish gray mixture that I used on the silver ball, which is 1 part of blue to about 5 parts of a maybe 20 to 30% gray. And we're going to follow the same lines. You put that horizon line in there, you put a little bit of shading out on the edges, and you blend down from the outer side. That blue will give that chrome just a little bit of extra pop, and it's helpful to have a little bit of color. And now I'm going to come in with a dark gray, which is probably about a 70% gray. It's not really a black. And I'm going to put my wobbly little horizon line in there. And I'm calling that horizon line. I know I haven't mentioned that before as a horizon line, but that's usually what you're seeing in most chromes, is you're seeing the reflection of the horizon. And of course, blending out from there a little bit. Same very much shapes that we used on the gold, silver. We're just going with more contrast. So all we're doing to get the difference between the chrome and the aluminum is hyping that contrast up. Notice I'm putting a lot more wiggly stuff in there. And yeah, we're gonna deepen that in pretty dark, because remember we were talking about that in the first series of spheres, how it's going to reflect whatever shadows and so forth are coming from up above. And that's our little shadow or the reflection from the shadow. We haven't put the shadow in yet, obviously, but that's our little reflection from the shadow right there, just like the other ones. I'm going to randomly just put some dark shapes in there and let them blur out just a little bit. And it's just giving us a little bit more interest inside the image is all I'm doing here. Notice I'm just kind of randomly popping those spots in. It's just important to note you're dealing with a sphere and that you're going to reflect the surroundings around you. So all this is just, going with the basics and then deciding what we want to add into it. Okay, so now that I got a pretty good bit of darks in there and everything, remember I haven't even used a black in there. If we used a black, we'd get even more contrast. I'm going to start pulling out all my highlights. We're going to start with, because we know what our light source is, same as every other ball that we've done so far. And we've got those 2 highlights there. But now I'm going to go in here, I'm just going to play around a little bit. And this is where it's really going to start to take on a life of its own as well. I'm going to add little reflections in various places that I think might have some. I'm going to add, little stuff here, a little bit of stuff here and there, and a little bit of flare from, the reflections out. Let's say there's another little window or something along the lines of the background right there. We're going to go ahead and add that in. Just make sure when you do those that you crisp up those highlights really, really crisply. And then I'm going to pretend that there's another light coming in for the backside. And so it's striking the edge of that ball. And there you go. All right, so next what I'm going to do is, I've decided, well, what would be different about this if we put that on a different surface, like maybe a wood table or something. So I grabbed some burnt sienna and I started just laying in a little bit of brown right there. That mixing cup I got in my hand, obviously, hopefully you guys picked that up. That's just, happened to be almost the same size as that circle, so using that just to keep a little overspray off of my ball. And we're going to make some changes there, and I'll show you what changes we're going to make. Then I mixed a little bit of blue violet with that burnt sienna in there, and then I'm just going to randomly scribble in some rough looking things that look like maybe a little bit of texture inside a wood surface. It's really easy to create wood effects Obviously, this is not super realistic, but it really does, become a pretty convincing picture. Regardless of the fact that I didn't go highly detailed there, it's still pretty convincing when I get done with the picture. Okay, now that I put the wood in underneath there, doesn't look right, does it? Again, it needs to reflect the environment. So the bottom curvature of the ball would reflect the tones from whatever's, you know, facing in that direction of the curve. So it's like a mirror, it's going to reflect. So we'll put some of those tones in there. All right, so as I was saying, now it didn't look right because of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this, the power of transparent. It's transparent burnt sienna. So I'm going to bring those sienna tones into the bottom of the ball. And then, of course, I'm going to use that darker color mix as well after I get done using my transparent. That's something you could not do with an opaque. So another little tip. So after I do that, I'm mixing up that darker color as well, and then I'm just going to randomly put in some pieces that, notice how the lines are going to follow the curvature of the ball, and so that's just going to kind of give a little bit of an illusion that there's some of that wood grain, those darker spots are being, you know, run up into the ball, and of course they curve with the curvature of the ball, the reflection of those line work in there. And of course, there's no background in there, so there was nothing to give you any kind of, you know, anchor. So I'm just putting a little bit of gray in there just to give you an idea that there is something there in the background, and that all will help to the illusion. Of course, if I had a blue wall or if I had an orange wall or anything along those lines that I was reflecting, of course, I would reflect some of those, but most of your reflections are going to come from upwards and towards the ceiling at that point. All right, guys, so that's going to be the end of this one, and I guess I could have taped this off on the top to make that a little bit crisper and better, but I really just couldn't be arsed with it today. So, yeah, y'all have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one. I hope y'all getting something out of it. Leave me some feedback below and tell me what you think. We'll talk to you later.